This is a tutorial on interval, creating graphs for interval data in Google Sheets. So you may be taking partial or whole interval data. So I just wanted to start off by looking at a data sheet of partial interval data collection. So this is the type of data collection where you're marking a letter code per interval. So partial interval just meaning that the behavior occurred at some point during the interval. If it didn't occur, you're marking nothing. If it occurred multiple times, you're still just marking one letter code. So you're just really looking at the occurrence or non-occurrence of that behavior within the interval rather than the frequency. So for example, for physical aggression, maybe it happened twice during this window. I would mark a P. Happened again here, a P just once. It happened 10 times here, but again, it's only one P. It didn't occur during these intervals, so they would be left blank. And so then if I'm going to graph interval data, it's date, and then all the subsequent columns can be my my total by target behaviors. So let's just say, I think that data sheet had shout outs, it had physical aggression. You know what, I'll just wrap this. So format, physical aggression, and elopement. And then I want a column for total intervals. And then in these columns right here, I'll put the percent. This is where my formulas are going to go. Again, it's spelling over, so I'm going to go format, text wrapping, wrap. Common error that I see with interval data is that people will graph it as the frequency of intervals. So I might get a graph from a student who is new to me, and I'll see elopement, intervals per day that behavior occurred, and it'll say like an average of 8 intervals a day. Well, I don't know if 8 is really a good or a bad number, and if you were showing this to a parent or outside provider, like 8 intervals really doesn't mean anything. I don't know if they were taking data every 30 seconds, in which case across a whole school day, like only 8 intervals is amazing, or were they taking data every 30 minutes, in which case in a whole school day, like 8 isn't that great because there's probably only 12 intervals. It's almost the whole school day. The longer the interval is, obviously the less accurate it is. So for classroom purposes, a lot of times we recommend 10 or 15-minute intervals. If you're progress monitoring long-term, just to make it easy, but you don't really want to go longer than 15. So again, I'm just going to put the date in here. So I'm going to say 12/01/19. Then I'm just going to drag down. I would go to my data sheet. I would say, how many P's did I have on December 1st? Count the number of P's for the day for physical aggression. Count the number of E's for elopement. Count the number of S's for shout outs. I go to my interval graph. I said, I counted 5 S's for December 1st. I counted 10 P's for December 1st. I only counted 2 E's for December 1st. Total intervals. So I'd have to say, how many intervals are on my data sheet? So if I count from 9 all the way down to this 315, 330, how many intervals is that? I'm going to say that's 26. It's important to have a total intervals column, just because there might be days if the student comes late, they leave early, they had a doctor's appointment, they're being pulled out of school for therapy, maybe something happened in your classroom and another student was in crisis. Maybe you missed an observation period. You're going to want to shade those dates, those times out, or X them out. Let's say this student didn't come until noon because they had a doctor's appointment in the morning. So having 3 P's out of 26 intervals is very different than 3 P's out of 10 intervals. So when I were to be taking this data in my classroom, if the student isn't there, something happens and data didn't get recorded for that period, they come late, leave early, I want to X out those intervals so that it can be taken out of the total. Right, so now I'm just going to put in some data. elopement. All right. So as long as they were there bell to bell and we were taking data bell to bell, my data sheet is 26 intervals. However, on the 6th, they had a doctor's appointment. They came in late. I count the number of intervals. There was only 15 that day. All right, so now I'm going to put my formula in. So it's equals, so shout out. So I'm going to say B2. My very first, the shout outs are in column B. My first row of data is 2 divided by the total. So that's E2, and then this is a percentage, so we're going to multiply times 100, and the multiply symbol for formulas is that little star or asterisk. All right, then it gives me this. Here's my percentage. Lots of decimal points after that. I'm going to click on this, which is decrease decimal places. I only like it to have 1 or 2 after. This little blue box right here, it's a little blue square, I can drag down, and it will bring the formula all the way down. I can also bring the formula over. It's guessing, so if I go up here, and it did not do it correctly. I'm going to fix that. It didn't guess. Sometimes it guesses correctly, sometimes not. All right, so I'm not going to do that for elopement. So elopement is column D, D2 divided by E2, because that's my total, times 100. Again, I'm going to round down on the decimal points and pull down. I'm going to do date, and then let's say I want to graph shout outs. I tend to graph these all separately, otherwise having like 3 lines on one graph in the same color, it's very visually confusing. You can't really see trends. So for interval data, I would do a graph personally, 1 for shout outs, 1 for physical aggression, 1 for elopement, and just generate 3 separate graphs. So insert chart. A chart pops out. All right, so I'm going to go to customize. First thing I'm going to do, like always, is change the title. All right, so I'm going to say, and again, we will always want our title to be as specific as possible, percentage of 15-minute intervals that shout outs occurred. All right. I'm going to look at my y-axis, my vertical axis, and it only goes up to 80. So again, right here, it looks like this was a really bad day. They almost spent their whole day shouting out, but because this is percentage, I'm going to want to change my vertical axis. When I'm graphing percentage, my vertical axis should always have a minimum value of 0 and a maximum of 100, since 100% would be the highest that they could obtain. So I'm going to fix that. So now it's doing 0 to 100. I'm going to add my data points in. Point size 7. Can move it to another tab, file, move to own sheet. All right. And then I have this. Okay. If I wanted to put in a trend line, I could do that under customize. Let's see. No, I think it's under series. Trend line. Again, I like to personally change the color of my trend lines. There we go. And that is how you graph interval data.